Welcome once again to the Old Cow Report. Of course, I'm your host, and we're coming to you live. I'm your host, Chuck Lee, coming to you live from the beautiful downtown tire factory and slaughterhouse. And with me, as usual, is my rusty, trusty sidekick.
Yes.
Fred, the Slaughterhouse Truth Stafford. Glad to see you tonight, Fred.
Hello there.
How's everything been going on down here at the slaughterhouse while I've been gone this week?
I guess it's been going all right.
Are you still bringing the cars in by the boxcar load, or those cows in by the boxcar load?
I don't know.
In one end and hamburgers out the other?
It's about time that we open this.
Let me see that. Okay, that's
the meeting has come to order now.
Okay, that's the beginning of the Loyal Order of the Raccoons. Have you got any new business today?
Yes.
What's that? How many new members have we got this week?
I don't know.
How many new members did we have last week?
None.
Okay, do we have any new business?
No, well, we've got to get members.
Do we have any old business?
No.
Okay, well then I call that we adjourn down to the American Legion. All right.
Okay.
Okay, that's so much for the Loyal Order of the Raccoons, of course. Fred was one of the charter members of that, and who else did we have early in there? Lorraine Lee's one of the charter members, and Dennis Berry was made an honorary member here a few weeks ago, and we're just growing by leaps and bounds. And of course, we'll have another meeting of the Loyal Order of Raccoons 2 weeks from tonight. But tonight, Fred, boy oh boy, as usual, we got a lot to talk about.
Right.
You know it never seems to fail that we don't have something to talk about. And tonight is no exception.
Yes, sir.
And of course, tonight's program is brought to you by the fine folks at Flavin. Fred has been drinking this now for
Don't drink it there.
80, 85 years now.
I smelled it and I almost died.
All right, well, there you have it. There's another testimonial from a satisfied customer. Of course, there's only one place you can get it.
And that is where?
Down at the corner of Ferry and Menominee Street in Eau Claire.
And that place closed for business back 6 months ago.
Did I ever tell you how they got started selling it there?
No.
The guy's car broke down out there in the country, and he walked into town, couldn't find any gas stations open, and he got to that little gas station down there at the corner of Menominee and Ferry Street, and all there was a pop machine there, and there was only one bottle left in there, and that was a bottle of Flavin Pop.
Yeah.
So he put his $3.95 in there. That's what it cost in the pop machines. And it says in the fine print there, if you read it, that it's for drinking, for embalming dead bodies, and it can be used as for fuel in case of emergency for your car. So he carried it all the way back out there to where his cars broke down, poured it in the gas tank, and drove that thing 25 miles on that one little can of Flavin Pop.
Right.
So ever since then, they've been selling it down there by...
that place closed. It's not open anymore. That put them out of business.
Well, it had nothing to do with the Flavin Pop because we're still going strong. And of course, you can always call Fred's house if you want to get a case of Flavin Pop. You want to give me your number on the air?
No way.
All right. Okay, well, Fred, as usual, we got a lot to talk about here, and I know you've been studying hard the last week, getting together what you're going to talk about. And so, first of all, we had a little bit of trouble with Barbie out there, Fred. Lawyers for the Mattel Incorporated are reportedly on a seek and destroy mission to rid the internet of trademark infringements of their beloved Barbie doll. Apparently, the toy maker took exception to one of the website's alternative Barbie sections, which included Kate Moss Barbie and Mentally Challenged Barbie. So they're going to try and shut that down on the internet there. Of course, you probably bought Barbie dolls for your daughters when they're growing up many, many years ago.
I don't remember.
You probably wish you had those first ones you bought for them if you did.
I didn't buy them.
They're worth several $1,000s now.
Yeah.
Okay, Fred, we're going to be taking calls tonight as usual, and our number, Roy, the pyrotechnical engineer Hoff, will be in the other room there, and he'll be flashing that number on the screen here in a moment to let you call in. And for those of you who want to be watching that silly football game, you can just stay tuned right in here to the Cow Report, because boy, do we have a lot to talk about, Fred. You know, you remember a few weeks ago when they had there was somebody going around letting all the mink out of the
Yes.
mink ranches around this area,
Yeah.
and they nabbed a couple guys from out of state and got their car, and I guess they'd been on a trek where they'd went all the way up around in North South Dakota, letting animals out in Minnesota, and then back into Wisconsin, and I guess they're from out east. Well, they're having the same trouble over there in Finland. But those farmers over there take their animals a little more seriously over there. A farmer who breeds fox and mink shot and wounded an anti-fur activist who tried to free the animals on his farm. The shooting Saturday at the Kuzma farm was the fourth such incident there, the Helsinki newspaper reported. The injured person, whose name was not given, was hospitalized in stable condition. So the farmers over there are taking that a little more serious than the ones are here, and hopefully it won't come to that in this country, but these so-called anti-fur activists have to realize that other people still consider that a commodity, and they're going to have to be careful of what they do to other people's private property, Fred. They can work on getting that changed through the legal system or through through elections to maybe have furs outlawed, but in the meantime, they can't be going and depriving people of their fundamental rights to a livelihood. Okay, Freddie boy, what do you got there for us tonight?
Russians don't want sex in the schools. Catholic World News has reported a prominent group of Russian professionals, politicians, and political activists has said no to sex education in the schools, despite promises that such programs would reduce AIDS and abortion. It says sex education will not only lead to sexual promiscuity and sexual excesses, but it would also lead to a tremendous growth in psychological pathologies and spur drug addiction and alcoholism. And child psychiatrist Boris Rabin said at a recent press conference caused by sex ed of O's.
Huh. So they're having their share of problems over there in Russia in that area too then, huh?
Apparently.
Well, you know, Fred, I guess just recently the reports came out that the number of AIDS, people infected with AIDS in just Africa alone was 20 million people. And of course there are vast areas in Africa now where the adults they're all dead, except for the very old and the very young. The adult populations, that 22, 23 to the 40 age group, is being pretty much wiped out.
Yes.
By what they call Slim's disease over there. It's just another slang term for the HIV virus that is just sweeping through Africa.
And today on WWIB, on the Marlon Maddox program, they had a doctor who was speaking on that particular subject. And he had plenty of good information there. And that
wasn't Gene Antonio, was it?
No.
Okay. I think we had Gene on this program several years ago. He was telling about the AIDS epidemic and some of the ways that you could pick up that disease, some of the more unusual ways. But it's very serious there in Africa and Asia, Fred. And of course, in this country, for years they said that there was 1 million people infected, but they never seem to have gotten past the 1 million mark. The Center for Disease Control still says 1 million when they say their statistics, but that figure is probably way outdated. It could be several times more than that by now. But it's nothing to take lightly. And people scoffed at us on this program, Fred, when we talked about how in the sweat glands and in the saliva and in the tears of people that the virus lives and can be passed just from from kissing from one person to another through the saliva. And we were scoffed and laughed at for years until the scientific community just in the last 6 months finally came out and said that that was a way that it has been transmitted and transferred from one person to another. So once again, we were vindicated, Fred. And talk about vindication. You probably remember on this program just a few weeks ago when I talked about how Hillary Clinton was traveling all around the country and around the world, and how it just dawned on me that she was campaigning for political office.
She is?
Well, that's what I was saying back then, and
Yeah.
it sounded like that I was just kidding, but here in the Washington Times, it's talking about Senator Hillary. Are you ready for this? Webb Hubbell, one of the Clinton's prison pals, is pushing Hillary for the U.S. Senate. You know, he told the Chicago Sun-Times, I've heard that she's talking about running for senator from Chicago and Illinois. I don't know if that's true or not, but she'd make a good senator. The First Lady, like her husband, is registered to vote in Arkansas, and the Sun-Times suggests that it's inconceivable that she would challenge Carol Moseley Braun, though many Democrats wish somebody would. And Democratic campaign consultants, the guys who soak up all the money the president, the VIPs, and the pals stay on the road to raise, like her chances. Says Eric Edelstein, a Democratic consultant in Chicago, she would be an extremely viable statewide candidate. Whenever she comes here, she is greeted as hometown Hillary. I mean, they just named a street for her in Park Ridge.
Uh-huh.
So, Fred, there it is.
Yes.
And people laughed at that when we brought that up on the program, but now there's a little bit of validity to it. And she could possibly be an outside, might be a draft Hillary campaign in the presidential election if Gore gets smeared by this illegal fundraising on that the Democratic National Committee and him himself made phone calls and did some fundraising that appears to be illegal. If he gets smeared bad enough, they could have a draft Hillary committee formed out there, and she might just get in the campaign. Now, would you vote for her?
Absolutely not.
Why not?
I don't care for her.
It could boil down to her and Elizabeth Dole running against each other.
I don't think Elizabeth Dole's going to run.
Well, I guess she was on the news yesterday, and her husband seems to think that she'd make a great candidate.
Well, I don't think too much of him either.
Okay, well, Roy there's going to put that phone number on the screen once he gets the scientifically motivated end of that thing going there, all that computer jazz there on the other side of the camera there that I can't get to. He'll be putting up a phone number there. In the meantime, Fred, over there in Russia, you were just talking about Russia. A Russian factory worker who has not been paid in months, that seems to be a problem in Russia. The army and the military haven't been paid. Now the coal miners don't get paid maybe a few times a year. Well, now the factory workers, they're not getting paid. So this Russian factory worker protested by nailing his hand to a wall to protest not being paid. So he took a nail, put his hand up against the wall and took one of those automatic staple guns and stapled his hand to the wall. And I guess that wasn't good enough because he threatened then. He made a threat that next time he was going to use a larger staple if he didn't get his pay.
Yeah.
So boy, he's really showing them, isn't he?
Mm-hmm.
He's going to staple his hand with a bigger staple next time. Okay, there. All right, there, Fred. So what did you have there coming up this
Well, I
time?
see there's a Wanderer. There's a column on page, and this is December the 4th, in the Wanderer, a St. Louis Paul newspaper, Return of American Nationalism. Scoff, if you will, at the claim, but I believe this fall may rank in historic significance only to the fall of 1989 when the Berlin Wall came down. Ridiculous, absurd, you say? Well, consider the three signal political events which mark this autumn.
What are they?
Well, Congress was give up the right to amend treaties, trade treaties, standing behind Bill Clinton was seemingly impossible phalanx. Ex-presidents Bush, Carter, and Ford, and ex-secretaries of state and trade representatives, the think tanks, the Heritage, to AEI, and to Cato and Brookings, the big media, and all the name economists. The prestige, punditocracy of the Chamber of Commerce, the Business Roundtable, and the Council on Foreign Relations, and so on. Yet all the king's horses, all the king's men could not prevail.
Huh, that's amazing. So they're talking about American nationalism, and that's from Pat Buchanan, right?
Yeah, and the second event was the collapse of the stock markets in Thailand and Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Korea, and Japan.
Well, they've had their share of problems over there with that stock market. And there's that phone number now, 839-6261. And below that is the homepage for the Cow Report, member. I think it's members, MEMBERS, tripod.com/Flavin/. And that will be back up there in a minute. Okay, Fred, you probably heard of this guy before, Strom Thurmond, South Carolina Senator. Well, he just turned 95 on Friday. He's the oldest member of Congress ever and its longest-serving senator. And he's 5 years shy of 100, but he's still an active U.S. senator. And just over the weekend, he showed it that he's still active. He hasn't slowed down at all. He spent his birthday traveling in the state of South Carolina, congratulating those who work in law enforcement. He planted a tree. He attended a fundraiser for the future Thurmond Monument on the state fairgrounds. Then on Saturday, he marched in not one but two parades, just last Saturday, including being the Grand Marshal of the Edgefield Christmas Parade, the town where he was born back in 1902. And of course, that was 1 year before Orville and Wilbur Wright even flew the first powered airplane at Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. But then last week, just before he turned 95, he announced that he was surrendering his chairmanship of the Senate Armed Services Committee. And that's a pretty powerful committee there, so he's given that up. And hopefully that will transfer to another good, solid conservative Republican. But Strom has been in there many, many years, Fred. How long do you think he's been in there now?
I don't know.
I think it's been over 40 years he's been the U.S. Senator from that state, 30, 40 years. So hopefully he'll have another 10, 20 years. Okay, Fred, we better take a call here now that we've got everything situated and coordinated. There's that email address there for our computer friends out there, members.tripod.com/, and then there should be a little thing called a tilde. It's kind of a sideways squiggle. It's up in the left-hand side of your keyboard, up towards the numbers there, and then the word Flavin. Okay, go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Hi, Chuck. Hi, Fred.
Hello there.
I have no idea what your show is about tonight because I'm not even able to watch it. My husband hates the Cowboys, and he's watching them. He's hoping they will lose. But I am capturing you in the VCR, so I'll be able to see you later.
Good.
But I don't know how I'm going to edit out the commercials. I guess I'll have to keep them in.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know, I like Flavin Pop. I've got. Now don't laugh, Fred. Piece of it. I've bought some. I got lost in Mega Foods and found some familiar-looking bottles. and I bought a dozen of them and took them home, and I soaked the labels off them, and I put on the proper labels that I made myself, and they say Flavin.
Well, that's good.
Hit the label, and I taped them on. So now I say I am the proud owner of a case of Flavin Pop.
Well, that's good. We're glad to hear that. And my Fred's lawyers will be down there to sue you for for infringement on our copyright there, but that's all right.
I guess I probably won't give you my name and address then.
Okay.
You know, I've noticed something kind of funny. It occurred to me that I've never seen Chuck smiling. And Fred smiled all the time, and he's got a wonderful smile and a nice laugh. And Chuck never smiles, and I'm wondering if perhaps Chuck Lee might be some diabolical android, maybe made by the Chinese. They're said to be inscrutable, so they wouldn't smile, and maybe if Chuck's an android, he's been programmed not to smile. No?
No, I don't.
Well,
I don't
then
think
in
that's
that
true.
case, maybe your beard is sort of heavy, and it drags down the corners of your mouth.
Yeah, I've had this beard for many, many years, and that possibly could be true. It might make it appear that way, but
Are you smiling now?
yep.
Are you?
Uh-huh.
Because, see, I'm not near a TV, and the TV isn't tuned into Channel 11, so I don't know. Are you smiling?
Yep.
Is it? Fred is?
Who's winning that game that your husband is forcing you to watch?
Oh, I'm not watching. I'm not even in the same room.
Oh.
In fact, I'm down in the basement on the phone down here.
Oh.
And last I saw, though, the Cowboys were behind, and that's what he wanted. He doesn't care who plays. He just wants the Cowboys to lose.
Well, that's good. I'm glad they're losing. That means more people will be watching our show then, so we can keep our ratings up.
Did you see, perhaps you mentioned it, your show got a mention in the Leader Telegram editorial?
No, I didn't see that.
Oh, you didn't? It was Sunday's newspaper.
Uh-oh.
I apologize for breaking the news to you.
No, I didn't see that.
Oh, you'll have to read it. It is the local editorial, and you're not mentioned by name. Your show is not mentioned by name, but I do kind of know who they were referring to, and it was you. But, you know, they may be politically correct, but they watch the show.
Well, I know that we do have some people that do tune into the show on a regular basis from the other media sources in the area, and I think it's because they want to get some pointers on how to say something, how to talk about other issues besides just the same old liberal to left-leaning diatribes and propaganda that they put out. And we're basically the only program in the area that in the last 10 years has dealt with the more conservative issues and tried to take the sometimes not so popular side of issues.
I think sometimes they have caught on because some of their editorials would be ones that you would approve of. I have noticed that.
Yep.
Yeah, so apparently they do pay attention, at least somebody down there. A particular editor who wrote the Sunday editorial tried to make it sound like a criticism, really, of one of your shows. I'm not going to mention the topic because it might stir up a hornet's nest.
Oh.
Does she want me to tell you what it was about? No?
I thought it's probably about was it about the school board election?
No. It was one of your funnier, actually it was one of your comedy shows in which you had a discussion about the faggot bars.
Oh.
Yeah. That episode.
Oh, okay.
What are you talking about tonight?
Well, we're just starting to get into some information here about Hillary Clinton possibly running for office, and talked about a guy over in Russia that nailed his hand to the wall because he hadn't been paid for a few weeks. And Fred brought up some things about
Pat Buchanan,
and
return of American nationalism.
I was just getting ready to talk a little bit about the U.S. Senate races coming up next year.
Politics.
Politics, yep.
Yeah. Well,
And then we're probably going to talk a little bit about this new cable system that just took over the cable in here, or getting ready to take over here in town.
we don't notice any difference. You know, they're giving us the very same New Year's gift that Time Warner has traditionally given us.
Which is probably raising the price?
Yep.
Yep.
Time Warner came up with that nice new tradition, and it looks like Marcus Cable is just continuing.
Well, you know, the rights to the city, there's about 30,000 people on the cable system in the Eau Claire area that Marcus is taking over from Warner. But they're buying that out now because in just a few short years, Marcus Cable is going to have to go to the city and negotiate another long-term contract. But I think what they're doing is they're losing sight of the fact that the city doesn't have to give that long-term contract to Marcus. They could sell the rights, or they could give those rights to several companies, or they could give it to 2 other companies, or they could give it to 1 other company besides Marcus.
You know, I hadn't thought of this before, but I wonder if this has ever been done, that any city would have put out feelers to various cable companies.
Yeah, some cities do have several cable companies that offer service, and you have a choice instead of a monopoly.
Yeah, but I wonder if it's ever been put up for grabs, advertising to various companies. Here's a city, what would you offer to us? And see if it was possible to get a better deal. Has this ever been done, I wonder?
Well, we have a committee that reports to the city council, and they're kind of the advisory committee about the cable companies and what should be done there. But I think that we should think very seriously about getting some competition in here and letting because competition is going to bring down the price and give us more variety. And the only way to do that is to have that competition.
If we get it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, exactly. But somebody did say, this was at one of the city council meetings that was televised by PAC Television, someone who representing either Marcus or Time Warner did say that the customers would really not notice any difference at all. I would say that's true because prices are going up regardless.
Well, hopefully we'll get that competition done. I know there's a lot of people that aren't too happy right now finding out that their bill is going to be going up.
There is one change, though. The people who do subscribe to Disney, pay for that service, will now be getting it part of their extended basic package. They won't be charged separately for Disney. So at least a few people, a very few people, I would say, would actually be better off. But for some of us who aren't in the least bit interested in Disney, it's not that great a deal, getting these new channels.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Well, evidently we had a little bit of trouble with our microphone.
Ah, no, I
And,
probably got censored. I'm not politically correct, you know. Somebody might have...
No, I think your mic on the telephone is just fine. I think mine was off. We're back online here, Roy?
You know, they try to censor you, too.
Well, here it is, 30 minutes in the program. They're just getting around to let me know that I didn't have any sound.
Oh, no, and I've been recording this, and Roy Rogers Hoff messed up, did he?
Yeah, he's been in there playing with fire and stuff instead of paying attention to what he's doing. And he's a pyrotechnical engineer.
You broke it about 3 minutes ago.
Oh, he says I broke it. Okay, well...
Well, it's been awfully nice to talk.
Okay.
Hear your voice.
I'm sorry that you're not able to watch us, but you can, maybe you can...
I'll play the tape, and I can hear you and see you tomorrow.
Okay, well, thanks for calling in.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. Well, you know, Fred,
Yes.
in the upcoming elections, you know, the United States Senate and the House are the Republicans control both just by a thread right now. In the U.S. Senate, there's five more Republicans than Democrats, and in the House, it's about 11 more Republicans than Democrats. The latest statistics that are the surveys, polls coming out show that right now, if the elections were held today, one of the major political scientists say that there's 34 U.S. Senate races coming up, and this one's saying that there's 15 of them that are going to go Republican, 15 Democrat, and there's 4 of them that are toss-up. that could go either way. And those four that are in the middle, are one of them is a pretty powerful Democrat, a pretty powerful Republican. That's Alphonse D'Amato there in New York State. It looks like he's in jeopardy of losing his seat. Another one is Carol Moseley Braun there in Illinois, and that could be why they're possibly looking at Hillary to run for that one, because she's in trouble. That seat could go Republican. And then there's two open seats down there in Arkansas. A guy named Bumpers, he's not running again. And the senator from Kentucky, Ford, is not running. So if those three seats go Republican and the D'Amato seat goes Democrat, the Republicans would end up with a net gain of 2 seats in this election cycle. I've given 57 to 43 for the Democrats. So that'll change a year from now, but the way it looks right now, the Republicans could actually pick up 2 seats in the U.S. Senate. Now, the U.S. House is a different story. We've got some big problems there, Fred. The Reform Party, Ross Perot's party, has threatened to buy 50 seats, take 50 seats away from the Republican Party to cause the Republicans to lose control of the U.S. House. And of course, you add that together with the labor unions are pouring millions of dollars in, and then the Democratic Party of the DNC on top of that, it could be pretty tough in there.
Yes.
But Perot is threatening to do that because he wants to see the Republicans lose control of the U.S. House. I always said that was just a wing of the Democratic Party, that Reform Party.
Yes.
Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Horsecock.
Well, there's another fine example, Fred, of the Eau Claire school system's fine educational standards. Another fine example of somebody that's probably taken a speech class in the Eau Claire school system.
And the third event in the UN Security Craven response to Saddam's humiliating ouster of American members of the UN team for his hidden weapons. France, China, and Russia all oppose U.S. action, and our allies have defected.
Well, how'd they do all that? You know, Fred, on the show the last 2 weeks ago we were on.
That's Pat Buchanan's page on the 4th of...
What's that article over there about? Oh, yeah, now I know who it is. It's Steve Forbes.
Yeah.
I was trying to think who that was, Malcolm Forbes or Steve Forbes. It's Steve Forbes is running for president.
Yes.
And he's running pretty tough there, Fred. A lot of conservatives are getting behind him.
Well, I don't know. He's not pro-life.
He isn't?
No.
You sure that article doesn't say he's pro-life?
They bring out that he isn't he doesn't believe in all the way in pro-life.
Well, we had somebody write an email message to the Cow Report homepage there, and I was going to bring it up on the last show, but I didn't have a chance to. And the guy said, the question was, how in the heck did Fred Stafford get 10,000 rubber trees on top of the old tire factory?
I wonder how he did that,
and they wanted to know on top of that how you kept them alive during the wintertime.
I know. I wonder myself.
I do too. Did you insulate them or what?
No.
Well, there's a lot of people want to know that. And in the meantime, I think Roy said there was something going on out there with the phones, and so if you're having trouble calling, getting through, go ahead and try it again. I think we got that straight. Okay, in the last couple of days, Fred, looks like there's another little scandal brewing in the local school district. You know, just recently we had that referendum, what was it, $39 million referendum that went down to defeat.
And I see our man has been talking about, Mr. Hanson has been talking about something today. I didn't listen to what he was talking about.
Well, as you recall, that referendum went down to defeat, but the school administrators, the superintendent's office withheld some vital information that would have helped to make a clearer choice on whether to vote yes or no on that referendum. They withheld the enrollment statistics until right after the election, and then we had this big gasp, and Hansen said that he was shocked to find out that the enrollment had went down in the Eau Claire School District. But if we'd have known that information before this referendum was voted on, it probably would have been defeated more soundly. And I think, editorially speaking here, I think that that's why that information was withheld. Speaking as somebody who worked in a regional school office for several years, that kind of information is known the first few days of the school year.
Yes.
It has to be known because that's how you pay the individual school districts. You pay them per student. You pay them per head.
Right.
If there's 1,000 students show up that day, they get 1,000 times whatever they pay per head. If it's $5 per head, they would get a $5,000 for that day. The school district would, so that it's part of that state aid money. So it appears here that that information was purposely withheld by the
Yes, sir.
by administrators within the school district to try and skewer the thinking of people into believing that we desperately needed this all these new school buildings and other services to the tune of $39 million.
Right.
And basically what I'm saying is if we'd have known this information ahead of time, the vote would have probably been more lopsided in favor of defeating that referendum. But there's not too many investigative reporters around asking those kind of questions.
Right.
Somebody from Channel 13 or Channel 18 or the Leader Telegram or perhaps a college paper or Way Radio or Wax Radio, one of the news sources around here should have been trying to dig that out and ask that question. Was that information deliberately withheld until after the referendum vote, after the election day?
I see what I was going to say, I forgot now, unfortunately.
You're talking about the upcoming elections, maybe?
No.
I see where the local school board president of the school board is not running. What's his name?
The fellow who's he's a doctor, a veterinarian over on.
All right. Okay, go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Yeah, sorry you coughed in my... I just had a question. Sunday was December 7th. As FDR said, it was the day that would remain in infamy. We had a little blurb in the front page in the bottom corner of the Leader Telegram. What I'd like to know, because I am of that era, and I have two veterans' children, why have they removed the honoring Pearl Harbor Day from calendars? Are we supposed to be ashamed that maybe the Japanese may be offended by that? That's my question.
Okay, well, Fred's an expert on the military. What do you think about that, Fred?
Well, you got a good point there. And it's unfortunate, but what you say may be true.
So it's no longer on the calendars anymore?
No, it isn't. And I was told that it's because we would be embarrassing the Japanese. Well, I think when they bombed Pearl Harbor, they deserve a little embarrassment from us.
They also deserve a little more embarrassment because the Roosevelt administration knew the attack was coming.
Yes,
And
but
they didn't do anything to stop it.
but we have some nice veterans that would like to be honored, and those that have loved ones that were killed during the Pearl Harbor invasion, I think, should be remembered on the calendars. I mean,
Right.
kids today don't even know what World War II is.
Yes, you're right.
Well, it cost probably,
A little ink maybe on the calendars.
well, it cost, what, 40, 50, 60 million people, maybe that many just in Europe alone were died from that war.
I had 5 uncles. I had a grandmother she was a Gold Star mother with 5 gold stars on her flag that hung in the window. And I remember that growing up as a child. And I was 4 years old when I heard FDR come over the radio in the middle of the afternoon, right after lunch, telling us that we had been attacked by the Japanese. And now we're supposed to help the Japanese out of their financial problems,
Yes,
aren't we?
yes.
Well, we still have something like, what, 40,000 troops over in Japan? And we also pretty much provide all of their defense for them. And it costs several $billion a year to do that. And we don't get much in return except a great big deficit,
That's true.
trade deficit, because we buy more from them than we sell to them. And so they should probably be giving us that difference in that trade deficit, paying us for the 40 or 50,000 troops that we have over there protecting them. They should be footing that bill 100%. But of course,
I'm the mother of 2 veterans of the Air Force, and they'll never be buried in Arlington. They haven't contributed to the Clinton campaign, so and they hopefully will not die of. They won't die as heroes, I hope. So. But I just wondered, could you find out maybe why they took it off the calendar, December 7th, the day that FDR said will go down in infamy?
yes, it sure was a very terrible day. And Fred, you probably remember that day, don't you?
I certainly do.
I was 4 years old. I remember it very well.
Yep.
I was on Ellis Island in the Coast Guard, and on Friday before Pearl Harbor, one of our battalions, or whatever you want to call it, companies, took off. We didn't know where they went. And Saturday, another one was taken off, and they went out and they seized the Norwegian, Danish, and Swedish ships that were in New York Harbor. And then on Saturday, they went and seized the Japanese and German ships, Italian ships. And that was done, and they knew it was coming.
Well, they knew something was coming. Well, we'll see if we can find out why they've taken that off the calendar.
I appreciate you listening, and I would also like to know, I keep kind of track of things, and I know that the school administrator has now resigned, but I was wondering why God didn't invent or give another commandment dedicated to Lee Hansen called "Thou shalt not whine." W-H-I-N-E.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Well, Fred, that's
Yes.
seems like they have a few troubles there. We'll see if we can find out why that isn't on the calendar anymore, because for many years that day was celebrated. I guess there still are some parades around the country that honor that event, and there's still a lot of veterans alive. Even though that's 56 years ago, there's still a lot of veterans in their 70s and 80s that remember that day well, and it plunged this country into World War II, and how many hundreds of thousands of Americans died during that? Was it
Yes.
500,000 died?
Yeah,
300,000?
probably.
So it was very serious business back then.
Yes.
In some of the darkest hours there, it looked like England was going to collapse under the weight of all that bombing, and all of Europe was pretty much taken over, and part of China was taken over by Japan, and it looked pretty serious there for about a year and a half, until we started turning the tide on things. But getting back to politics there, Fred, we had here Political fundraising is still in the news. No doubt political fundraising will proceed full steam ahead now that Janet Reno has decided not to do anything about some of the inconsistencies in fundraising. So here's the current top 5 contributors to federal candidates and parties. And this is provided to the Washington Times by the Center for Responsive Politics. And these are the top 5 biggest groups that are contributing money to various campaigns right now. Number 1, $4.2 million by Philip Morris, the big tobacco people.
Yes.
And of that $4.2 million, they gave 21% of it to the Democrats and 79% to the Republicans. Number 2, the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, about $4.1 million, and 99% of that went to the Democrats and 1% to the Republicans. Then in third place, you have the Association of Trial Lawyers of America.
They gave to the Democrats.
85% of the $3.5 million went to Democrats, 14% to the Republicans. Then in fourth place, you have the National Education Association. 96% of that $3.3 million went to the Democrats and 4% to the Republicans.
Yes.
And in fifth place, you have the Teamsters. Now, one time the Teamsters Union sided with Nixon and actually swayed a lot of their union members to vote for Nixon in '72. Well, this time around, $3.2 million was handed over by the Teamsters Union. 96% of that went to the Democrats and 3% to the Republicans. So as you can see here, the Democrats are still, the money is still flowing in pretty heftily there. Only one of those 5 groups showed where the Republicans were getting more.
Yeah.
And that was from the tobacco interests, and that's natural because Clinton and Gore are both in office, and they've been really anti-tobacco the last couple of years. So Philip Morris is going to try and change the tide by giving to the Republicans there. But other than that, your unions are still pouring millions of dollars into the Democratic Party. 3 of the top 5 were unions: Teachers Union, the Teamsters Union, and the Municipal Workers Union, State and County Municipal Workers Unions. Okay, what do you got there real quick, Fred, before we take another call?
Janet Reno seems to feel that Clinton has made it. She now announced, as expected, she sees no need for a special prosecutor to investigate whether the campaign finance laws were broken by her boss in '95 and '96. Although she promises to take stern action and says, I will not hesitate if she should happen to come across anything untoward.
Huh.
In other words, she's taken Bill Clinton's side there.
Well, she definitely has got a blind spot there when it comes to going after the Clinton or Gore or the Democratic National Committee. Of course, her boss is Bill Clinton, and she was appointed by Clinton. And for those of you that remember or don't remember, she also fired every federal prosecuting attorney in the country that worked for the federal government, fired every one of them, lock, stock, and barrel, the first time in the history of our country that's happened, and she replaced them all with Democratic prosecutors. But that was there were several reasons that was done, and one of them was basically to stop any prosecution of any people that they didn't want prosecuted. They could kill it all, because if there's no prosecution, then nobody's going to be brought to justice on anything. So Reno has been keeping the lid on a lot of these things now for several years, and all I can say to the Clintons is they better hope that she lives all the way through his term until his retirement. Otherwise, he could be wearing stripes and a ball and chain on his foot for many years to come.
Yes.
Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
I was wondering, how do you feel about the language that is being said on music and today's music that our kids listen to? Like, there's a new song out by Prodigy. It's not part of my language here, but the song is called "Smack My Bitch Out."
Uh-huh.
And how do you feel about that? Do you think that the kids should be listening to that, or is it brainwashing them and making them do all sorts of bad things and stuff?
Well, if nothing else, it's stepping all over the English language because it's improper use of the language, and that does seem to work its way through the culture and through society, that kind of slang stuff, until where you got everyone using those type of slang words. But it does probably have a subconscious effect on the youth of the country. It probably does downgrade the our thoughts towards women. It does probably subconsciously, it does lead us to believe that they are second-class citizens, and that those type of things can be said about them without having to worry about it. But I know what you're talking about. There have been some pretty rough languages, rough things said about a lot of things. Like there's been songs about killing white people, sang by blacks. There's been songs about killing cops. There was a famous song called Cop Killer. But this stuff is getting into the culture, and it seems like our youth are the old ways of respect and family values and things are kind of being thrown out the window, and so we're kind of degenerating into this kind of a situation now where songs like that end up on the top 10 and they sell millions of albums promoting that kind of stuff, Fred.
Yes.
Now, what do you think about that?
I agree with them. I don't like it.
Now, you come from an era, Fred, where they didn't even swear in songs.
Right. Right. And that was the way it should be.
They sang maybe about a little kiss or holding hands or something. Heck, I remember the Beatles back in 1963. One of their first big songs was "I Want to Hold Your Hand." That was it. So you're right on course there. It probably does affect it's affecting our morals to a certain degree, and subconsciously it's working its way into the society, and it has its negative effects. Okay, Fred, what do you got there?
And this is from the Wanderer, December 11th, on page 5, Joseph Sobrand column, and that it says liberals blame Joe McCarthy for much of the uprising, conformism that they lamented, but McCarthy himself was a maverick, a loose cannon, and who had little lasting importance. In fact, his name was become one more epithet, McCarthyism. In the arsenal of epithets, racism, sexism, on the university campuses, someone observed it took more guts to agree with McCarthy than to attack him.
Well, that's for sure, Fred, and you probably remember Joseph McCarthy. He was liked or he was hated. A lot of people, one or the other with him, and he had his followers, but he also had people that couldn't stand him, and eventually he died of a brain tumor, I think it was. Died premature death. But that's the way things are, Fred. And
Right.
Okay, we're going to go back here to, here's an interesting issue here, or article here, Fred. Melvin Marshall spent 6 weeks in a South Carolina jail for carrying what police thought was heroin. For some reason, they didn't believe Marshall's story that the packet contained mushy vitamins, or in other words, vitamins that got squished up in a little package. Marshall was eventually released after 6 months when lab tests showed he was telling the truth. Now, why did it take 6 months? That guy sitting in jail, or 6 weeks, excuse me, sat in jail 6 weeks before they even tested these vitamins and found out that he was innocent, let him go.
Yes.
Isn't that amazing, Fred?
Yes.
And then another thing here, in a surprise decision, police in Los Angeles have returned 6,400 bayonets to the military after carefully determining that they have no use for them. We can imagine no circumstances whatsoever, said an ACLU attorney, where it would be appropriate for a local police agency to put a bayonet on the end of a rifle. except maybe in the rebellion they had out there, the riots from just a couple of years ago.
Yes.
That spun out of control real quick there, and they had to bring in National Guard troops, and I think they've had bayonets on the end of their guns. And maybe that's where those 6,400 bayonets came from, Fred. They were left over from the riots back in, what was that, 92?
Yes.
Okay, Fred, what do you got there real quick before we take another call?
Brent Bozell III, founder of Media Research Center, Alexandria, Virginia, gave the opening address in this year's Minnesota Citizens Concern for Life Convention. The convention with the theme Life is a Matter of Humanity took place in St. Louis Park, Minnesota on November 14 and 15. Following Bozell's talk, the Wanderer interviewed him with the media's continuing influence on the elections, alternate media, and the internet, and a pro-life movement, and campaign against nothing sacred and Hollywood's attitude towards life issues. And this was from the December 11th of the Wanderer, the St. Paul newspaper, a Catholic paper.
Well, that Brent Bozell's a pretty good guy.
Right.
Well, you know, Fred, out there in Arizona, they got their problems with crime in Phoenix and Tucson area. Here's a little news item. A woman in charge of coordinating crime prevention programs at the Arizona State University has been arrested for burglary and theft. And she was in charge of that.
Yes.
And then down in Mexico, the chief and the deputy chief of Mexico City's anti-kidnapping unit got kidnapped last week. And they're still missing.
That's too bad.
I know. So things are rough all over. All right. Looks like you bought yourself a big book there, Fred.
Yes.
Hey.
And it's Prescription for Nutritional Healing by James F. Balch, MD, and Phyllis A. Balch, CNC.
And that book tells about drug-free remedies.
Yes. Using vitamins, minerals, herbs, and food supplements.
I know you're a great champion of all the vitamins and minerals and good clean water to drink and herbs and other things of that nature, and it has helped you get through 2 strokes and get back on your feet, right?
Yes, it did.
I know. Even the doctors were surprised.
I bought these for my daughters and for my wife.
Oh, well, that's good. Okay, and then Fred here, finally we have one here from France. A state prosecutor in Marseille, France, has ruled the death of a politician to be a suicide, despite the fact that the man was shot 5 times. Authorities are sticking to their theory that Andre Isolde shot himself in the wrist, stomach, groin, and throat before finally aiming at his own head. Shot himself 5 times and committed suicide. Believe that?
No.
I don't either, but that's the way it is, right here in the Cow Report. Did we have that? Did we have that? That final call on there, Roy? Okay, I guess we're down to that time again where we have to say goodbye, and we appreciate all of your calls and tuning in tonight. I've been your host, Chuck Lee, and with me has been our rusty, trusty sidekick, Fred the True Stafford, and along with Roy Rogers, Sr., our director, and we'll see you right here again next time on the Old Cow Report. So adios, amigos, and amigettes. Goodbye.
Bye.